You hear people, they talk about the gift of desperation, right? And that's different for every person. It's different. Some of us got to be thrown in jail, divorced, crash a car. Some people have to run over a pedestrian and kill him. I mean, it's the bottom is this desperation is different for everybody. Some of us have an emotional bottom, and that's enough right before they. But we all have that horrible feeling of miserable desperation, right? And when we get there, hopefully we're going to be willing to do something. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. If you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Sometimes the new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he is likely to say you rushed him. We're gonna highlight to the end of the paragraph. You will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Never, right? There's very few nevers in this book. And there's one of them. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools. Next to that, write 12 steps for his inspection. Show him how they worked with you. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him that if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. Underline anything. So, next to that, we can write first approach. First approach. And then under that, we can write only tell them what I have done. Don't tell them what to do. Right, so this is on the first approach. Now, that may change later, right? I mean, every sponsor treats every sponsee differently, right? But my sponsor said first approach, right? Only tell them what I have done, don't tell them what to do. And that might change later. I love this guy, man. He said, when I sponsor people, he said, I never know if I'm going to be Mother Teresa or Attila the Hun. He doesn't know because everybody's different. And this guy, I mean, I love him. He goes on his intuition, right? So that might, some people need a heavy hand. It's like, you have got to do this, right? You know, once they've agreed to do what you recommend to them. And other people you don't need to do that with. So everybody's different. Highlight the next paragraph. If he is not interested in your solution, if he expects you to act only as a banker for his financial difficulties or a nurse for his sprees, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. This he may do after he gets hurt some more. You know, again, you know, we're gonna have to get beat up. If he is sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read this book in the interval. After doing that, he must circle must and then highlight. Decide for himself whether he wants to go on. That's a decision he needs to make. Keep highlighting to the end of the paragraph. He should not be pushed or prodded by you, his wife, or his friends. If he is to find God, the desire must, circle must, come from within. Right? So after that, right, can't be forced on him. Can't be forced on him. I mean, this is an inside job, man. My whole life, I was using outside stuff. Car, top salesman, acclaim, prestige, different girlfriend, moving to a different city, using outside stuff to try to treat an inside job, and it didn't work. Must come from within. If he thinks he can do the job in some other way or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. There again, we're not saying that we have the only approach that works, but I will tell you that this approach has worked with millions of sick and dying alcoholics. We're going to highlight the next sentence. We have no monopoly on God. We merely have an approach that worked with us. There it is. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly. Let it go at that. So we're going to write something at the bottom of the page. Okay, write, give your number, / take their number. Come on, man. Somebody, here's my number. You think that alcoholic is going to pick up a 10,000-pound telephone and call you? You know, fat chance. So give your number, take their number. And again, this is from my sponsor. Call them twice. So we're gonna call them twice. You know, maybe call them maybe even that night or maybe the next day, and then maybe, you don't get an answer, they don't respond, you call them maybe 2 or 3 days later, right? And I'm not saying, never call them again. Maybe you'll call them a month later, right? And if your sponsor says something else, right, your sponsor's right. I'm just making some suggestions here. But I got to tell you, I forgot that I gave this guy my phone number, one time, and just out of the blue, I was just super low and miserable and hopeless and thinking about suicide. And all of a sudden, this guy calls me up, and it just floored me. So take their number as well, because if you're anything like, they're like me, they're not going to call you, man.
John, that would be somebody of the same sex then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I
Stop it.
Yeah, I mean, I am a firm advocate that men sponsor men and women sponsor women. And one of the reasons for that is I've never seen an unattractive girl since I turned 12, right? That's the main reason. So, yeah, men with men, women with women. Although there's obviously exceptions, right? Yeah, and I told you guys the story about that woman that kept getting hit on. So, I mean, stuff like that, when I hear it, if we see that, we stop it. Right? Because AA is not a pickup club, right? We see a newcomer coming in here and she's getting hit on by men. I'm gonna say, look, man, you got to stop that. That is not what we're about, right? So we can't let stuff like that go on, because AA's got to be a safe place for everybody. I will say, of course, maybe it's because I'm blind, but I will say that I've not seen any of that at this club. I did see that at the New Hope Alano, and I've seen it to the extent up there that they actually had a little blurb that they read. I forget what it said. It was wonderful. They read at the beginning of the meeting that if you've come here to do this, you've come to the wrong club, right? But they actually had to put that in their opening readings. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Because if somebody, that person might leave and they might die. I mean, God. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. Highlight the next sentence. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you, right? And obviously, if you're a girl, then you're chasing a woman who cannot or will not work with you. So, I had a guy when I first sobered up, and my heart was in the right spot, but I hadn't worked these steps, and I picked him up and drove him to a meeting every night, and I did this and that, and he really wasn't interested. He was just interested in getting his card signed long enough that where his DWI case was over with, and then I never saw the guy again. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. To spend too much time on anyone's situation is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. One of our fellowship, you can highlight to the end of the paragraph, one of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half a dozen prospects. He often says that if he had continued to work on them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. You can write Bill W. next to that. So this guy, I'm lucky this guy, we are all so lucky this guy didn't give up. He failed with his first half a dozen prospects. He went, this was his first 6 months. He was running around New York trying to help people. And finally, he got that job offer, and he was getting ready to go to Akron for a proxy fight. And he went to his wife, Lois, and he said, he looked at Lois, he looked at her, and she was wearing a very thin, threadbare sweater. And he said, Lois, I have not supported you our whole life. He said, I've been running around trying to help people, and nothing has worked. I'm done with this nonsense. I'm going to go to Akron. I'm going to make this business thing happen, and I'm going to support you in the way that you are that you should be supported. This thing doesn't work. And Lois, and he said, nobody's staying sober. And Lois looked at him, and she changed history. She said, you've stayed sober. Right? That made Bill think. He said, my God, you're right. I have stayed sober, even though nobody else. She changed history with that statement. Suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He has read this volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program in recovery. Highlight the next little sentence there. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Right? That's why I say in order to take somebody through the steps, you have to have worked the steps yourself. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision. Above that, write 3. And tell his story. Above tell his story, write 5. But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. He may be broke and homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little, circle the word little, financial assistance. Right? I just love the story, man. One of my second sponsee, he was just about he was out of money, and I had him come into the tile shop, and we needed a warehouse guy. We hired him that day on the spot. The very next day, the HR manager came running out and said, "Who hired this guy? He's got felonies. Who the hell hired him?" And my boss pointed at me and said, "He did." And the HR guy said, "Do you vouch for him?" And I said, "I do." And that guy became a warehouse manager, and then he sold for us, and now he's got a great job in the office. So I mean, it really works out. But he was serious, and he was doing the work. But you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your home for a few days, but be sure you use discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Permit that and you only harm him. You will be making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than his recovery. So again, after recovery, right, don't deprive him of his bottom. Don't deprive him of his bottom, right? Yeah, but man, I don't want to stay on the street tonight. Maybe that's good that he's on the street for a night or two. Where the heck did my pen go? There it is. And as far as letting somebody into your home, this is a bad story, but I think it's important that I tell it. My first real sponsor was my second sponsor. He let somebody into his home. And this person raped his girlfriend. So we've got to be careful. I mean, we have got to be careful who we come in, and obviously we have to ask everybody's permission. Now that was an extreme case, but you know what, man, it did happen. It did happen. I'm more likely to try to get somebody into detox and treatment, right? Rather than in the old days when they took them into the home to try to wean them off. We've got places now where we can get these guys, and quite frankly, the detox professionals and treatment professionals are probably a lot better than me. Never, underline the word never. There's another never. Never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Okay, underline the next 4 lines. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to be the Good Samaritan every day if need be. Okay, so next to that we're going to write live the program. Live the program. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money, your home, counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Your telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. Your wife may sometimes say she is neglected. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. Eric hasn't done that to me yet. You may have to fight with him if he is violent. Sometimes you will have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions. So next to that, all of that, we're going to write price of sobriety on one side and love thy neighbor on the other. Price of sobriety on one side and love thy neighbor on the other. But again, guys, I don't even know what a sedative is. I'm not going to be administering sedatives. I'm going to get these people into detox. And if they get out of detox and they need a place to stay for a day or two till they get into treatment, then you know what, sure. I'm a single guy, you can come and sleep on my couch for a little bit. But they had better be heading into treatment or have a plan of action. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long time. It is not good for him, and it sometimes creates serious complications in a family. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is a much better chance that the head of the family will recover. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. So off to the right, we're going to write, direct them to Al-Anon. Direct them to Al-Anon. And you know, there's plenty of alcoholics where I work, or not plenty, but there's some. But I think that there's more people that have a family member that is a drug addict or an alcoholic. And I always tell them, I say, look, man, I say, you should go to Al-Anon. And you know, they're just like alcoholics, though, because very rarely do they do that. But I tell them, if you go to Al-Anon, you know, it's not so you'll be able to handle the drunk. You go to Al-Anon because you're sick too. Al-Anon is for you, man. You know, it's not for them. But they do, you know, give you things to do. But it's so that they can get better too, because this is a family disease, and everybody who is around an alcoholic gets sick, right? So they work the steps just like us.
John,
Yeah.
can I add?
Yes, of course.
Super fast. Al-Anon, we also have to hit our bottom. I didn't know this. It took me years, but and this is something that we discuss in Al-Anon too. We hit our own bottom. And often, that's why often they come once, they come twice, and they go, that's not for me. And then when things get worse, finally they decide to also come, and then they really stick with it. And then they discover the treasure of the steps.
Yeah, just like us. I mean, we're slow learners, man. I don't know what it is about this disease. Now, funny enough, that same documentary, Risky Drinking, on HBO, I'm doing a commercial for HBO here. There was a woman, this very guy who spent tens of thousands, and I'm guessing, but I think he spent a lot of money trying to control his drinking while drinking. He was married to a gal. And this gal, oh my God, she was in such bad shape. She was so sick. And at one point, she was screaming into the camera. She said, "There's no therapy for idiots like me who put up with your bullshit." Right? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me that nobody has told this woman to go to Al-Anon? Right? Because she was so sick, and it showed the dynamic of these two people, and I mean, it was very painful to watch. But there is a place for idiots who put up with bullshit. It's called Al-Anon, right? For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. Okay, highlight the next sentence. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. So next to that, write, work on alcoholism first, then other problems. Work on alcoholism first, then other problems. Right? And I work on alcoholism first, then other problems. And I got to tell you, man, I went through 9 treatments, right? I would get out of these treatments, and I would say, my gosh, I don't have any money and I don't have a job. I'm a worthless human being, and there's no way I can do any of this crap until I get back on my feet. I've got to get back on my feet before I do any of this AA bullshit, right? That's what I thought. And as a result of that, guess what? You know, by the time I got that job, I got back on my feet. My self-will came back, and I'm a salesman. I'm a good salesman. I got money in my pocket. I got a nice place to live. I don't need this AA nonsense, I would always tell myself, and I'd start drinking again. So we work on alcoholism first and then other problems. Yet we do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think it is not. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. Okay, highlight to the end of the paragraph. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. Very important. Highlight the next 3 lines as well. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trust in God. Put a 2 and 3 above that. And clean house. Put 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All right? 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now the domestic problem. Oh, off to the left, I love this. We're going to write something. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. I mean, a lot of people come in here and, it's the old one-upsmanship. I lost this, I lost that, I lost this, blah, 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 blah. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. Everything you lost, you didn't need. Everything that was left was all that I needed to recover. And I don't care if that's just the shirt on your back, right? That's just the shirt on your back. That might be. And some of us need to have nothing. We need to have nothing so that we'll take this seriously and do the work. Now the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. Highlight the next 4 or 5 lines. When your prospect has made such reparation as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put those principles into action at home, and underline into action at home. Right? That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home. Though his family be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. Double underline this next little line. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. Like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incompatible people discover they have a basis upon which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. Let's highlight the next 5 lines. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time, provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Highlight that. That's quite important. And we're not going to get that overnight, man. That's going to take time. I mean, I was very touchy for the first 2-3 years. Still am, right? Still am. But I've learned to keep my mouth shut now. Of course, we all fall much below this standard many times. But we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree. I mean, I need these steps like nobody's business because I am a hothead. I work in a Shark Tank, a commission sales environment, and I mean, I always have one foot in the material, right? And to keep the other one in the spiritual is very hard for me. And thank God that I've got these steps that I can try to practice on a daily basis. You know, and a lot of times I fail and I do stupid stuff, but because I have this program, I'm able to go to people that I may have harmed and make amends quickly, and so I don't have to carry this baggage around with me, right? If there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. Then highlight this little line. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Next to that, we're going to write, recovery comes first. Don't dictate. Recovery comes first. Don't dictate. Recovery comes first, don't dictate. Sometimes it is to the best interest of all concerned that a couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. Highlight the next sentence. Actually, two sentences, the little one. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. Just those two little lines there. And again, I mean, that's the same thing like saying I got to have all of this money and all of these things before I work the steps, right? No, recovery's got to come first. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Highlight, remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. You can stop highlighting there. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family comes back too soon. Highlight the next three lines. Both you and the new man must, circle must, walk day by day the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. So next to that, we're going to write promise. That's another promise. Right? And again, dependent upon people. We put people on a pedestal, and those people fail, we're going to be in trouble. Remember Bill's letter that I read last week. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands, highlight, in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Okay, so highlight just that. In God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. And my sponsor had me write something next to that. He had me write every time. Every time. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Again, write promise next to that. That's another promise. Okay, highlight the next two lines. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. So next to that, write, don't take sides. Don't take sides. And I can't say I've got a whole lot of experience there, but I do have some. Right? I got the wife and the husband on the phone. I'm right, aren't I? I'm right. No, I'm right. And I'm on the phone and, hey, man. Right? You stay out of it. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do. But urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person. Not bad, not mean, not horrible. Sick, and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. Let's highlight the next three lines. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write something important. Give advice only if you have experience. Give advice only if you have experience. Right? So I don't have any kids and I'm not married. Now, if I've got a sponsee that needs advice on that, well, guess what? We've got many people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know many of them, and I'm going to say, you know what, man? You go talk to Eric, because Eric lived that situation that you do. I think he could tell you how he walked through that, right? And we've got sponsors chains, right? Your sponsor. We're going to find somebody that has lived that, just like when we have to make a really hard amend. We're going to find somebody who has done that in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to get somebody that has actual experience. Now, in the past, right, when I was using or I hadn't worked these steps, I didn't know better. If somebody asked my advice on something, even though I've got no experience, I still knew the right answer, right? I'd make something up. No, we don't do that, man. We don't do that anymore. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. Assuming we are spiritually fit, underline these two lines. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. That is very important, man. We can do all kinds of stuff that we never thought we would be capable of, ever. Right? Assuming we're spiritually fit. What is our relationship with God like? What are our basic instincts? Are we thinking of ourselves? I mean, how are we, right? People have said we must, circle must. We got a lot of musts here. We're going to circle them all. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go into their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Okay, so next to that we're going to write BS. That's BS. You know, when I didn't work these steps, I could be reading a novel and it would talk about pulling an ice cold beer out of the hotel fridge and how the nice little droplets were going down and my mouth would start to water and or I'd see it on TV. And today it does not bother me at all. It does not bother. And if I've got a reason for going into a bar, I'm going to go. I went to my sister's wedding. And it took place in a bar, and I was there with my two alcoholic brothers and my whole family. So the normies were drinking and getting drunk, right, and getting rowdy. My two alcoholic brothers, whenever they're at family engagements, they're not allowed to drink, right? For 3 hours, those poor guys were sitting there, the gloomiest gusses in the world. I'm sober. I'm up there dancing with the belly dancers, laughing, having a great time, right? Because I had worked these steps, that I had the awakening, and I wasn't. And I just looked at those poor guys, right? And I just wish I could reach out and touch them and give them this, but I can't. I couldn't. Our experience shows us, highlight the next 4 lines, our experience shows us this is not necessarily so. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. Right? And I'm not saying that I don't have days where my spiritual condition is bad. Of course I do. We're all going to have bad days. Now, my spiritual condition might be pretty lousy on any day, right? But I still have to maintain it. So, even if I'm not feeling too good, as long as I do the actions this book tells me to do, I'm going to be just fine. I might not feel fine, but if my actions are what the book tells me to do, I'm going to be fine. So your spiritual condition is not based upon how you're feeling. That's ridiculous. It's based upon what you're doing. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap, and even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. I love that. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory that he would escape the alcohol problem. There was a fellow, he was a sports announcer here in Minnesota, and he got addicted to crack. And, he went to treatment and he relapsed and did this and that. Finally, this fellow locked himself away from society for an entire year. Right? He just locked himself away, didn't go to meetings or anything else. He figured that if he got enough time between himself and the last use, he would be okay. Well, this guy, when he came out of his apartment after being locked away for a year, what do you think happened? He relapsed immediately. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed, underline doomed, to failure. That's that guy. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. A lot of times, man, you don't work these steps and it feels like you're in jail doing time. Right? Until we can have that next drink. So we're going to highlight the next 4 lines. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. My sister's wedding. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain ordinary whoopee parties. I tried to Google whoopee parties and I couldn't get a good answer. So, so I got whoopee cushion and a few other things. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, highlight this next sentence, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Right? So, I believe the book only talks about motives twice. One of them is when you're thinking about jumping into bed with somebody, and here, right? If you're going to go, if you've got a good reason for going to someplace, right? And the reason for that is because motives can get us in trouble. But if we live by the principles, we're going to be okay. So we try to live by principle, not by motive, because my motives can trick me into thinking that I'm doing God's will, right? But if I live by principle and I check with my sponsor and other sober members, I'm in much less chance of doing something foolish. Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. There it is. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. So next to do not think of what you will get out of the occasion, next to that write self-seeking. Self-seeking. There's another good little definition of that. Why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, my two brothers, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you are with a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Highlight the next sentence. Let your friends know they are not to change their habits on your account. Right? We don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Man, when I quit smoking, I became an evangelist, right? You can't smoke! And I did that too when I quit drinking at first. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. Okay, highlight the next 3 lines. Your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere you can be helpful. And next to that sentence, write not later. We do that right now. I mean, I got to tell you guys, there is great excitement in helping other alcoholics. Great excitement. I mean, if I wasn't doing Code Blue, if I wasn't running out trying to help other sponsees, my life would be kind of boring. If I wasn't taking topics and going to these meetings, my life would be kind of boring, and I don't know if I'd be sober. Right? We need excitement, and I get my excitement in these rooms, right? And by trying to help other people. And I'm not saying that I do all kinds of fun stuff now that I only used to be able to do when I was drinking. I love going to the Boundary Waters sober, man. I used to have to bring up a couple of half gallons of Windsor and an ounce of pot. Right? I love going up there now with no mind-altering chemicals, much better. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Highlight, keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write stay in the program of action. Stay in the program of action. Many of us keep liquor in our homes. I don't. But I think the guy who rents my basement has beer down there. I don't know. I see empty bottles now and again. We often need it to carry green recruits through a severe hangover. Again, I get them into detox. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they are not alcoholic. I tell my family members when they come over, they can bring their wine. It doesn't bother me. But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. We feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. Underline the next sentence. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. We don't do that. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for the Spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds that we are not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good. Underlined at the end of the paragraph, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Right? I no longer hate alcohol. I just don't drink it. Someday we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem. Go ahead and highlight to the end. But we shall be of little use if our attitude is one of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything We have to. I just got a couple of more quick things. Everybody, listen, I want everybody to listen to that song, Margaritaville. Listen to the words. Just listen to the words. Put that on. He wrote that song in like 15 minutes. I want to say that some of the things about step 12 that Bill wrote, we live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. He said right action is the key to good living, right? Doesn't matter how we feel. He said right action is the key to good living. If I'm having a really bad day, at the end of the day, they're not going to say, little Johnny was feeling kind of bad that day. They're going to say, what did John do on that day, right? The joy of good living is the theme of AA's 12th step. The benefits we receive from this program are directionally proportionate to the effort we put into it. Right? No wonder I never recovered. I never put anything into it. Right? But once we put a lot into it, we're gonna get great results. And then I'm just gonna write pick sponsor. I'm gonna give you six quick things. Then we'll say the 7-step prayer and get out of here. So pick sponsor. Okay. 1, sober. Right? Obvious. 2, done the work. 3, has sponsor. 4, will tell truth even when it hurts. Will tell truth even when it hurts. 5, active in service work. Active in service work. And 6, loves to laugh. And I put, after service work, I put attitude of gratitude because gratitude is action. So, sober, done the work, has sponsor, will tell truth even when it hurts, active in service work, loves to laugh. We got to have fun in sobriety, doggone it. Loves to laugh. And I want to end by saying all of us are equal in God's eyes, right? This is what I was taught, and I believe it to be true. God does not see any of us as substandard people. And God wants all of us to succeed, to be sober, to experience love, and to have a good life. So with that, we will go to the 7-step prayer. Which is on page 76. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Peace. All right. Thanks.